This week's big review is Ethera Soundscapes from 0G. This is actually the third library in the Ethera collection, and I've never reviewed one before, so I think it's about time that I did. Thanks to Time and Space for sending me this one for a play. This library is 14GB in size, runs in the full version of Contact 5.6 and above, and it's actually 3 libraries in one. The first is a male and female solo vocal library, then there's a collection of atmospheric ambiences, and finally a collection of synth instruments. So it took me quite a while to go through all of the presets and sounds of this library, and there was a lot to get stuck into, especially with the ambiences and synth sounds. These are all based on a much smaller number of source sounds, although the amount of effects and modulation options that have been thrown at each one can make them sound wildly different from one another. Some of the names are nicely descriptive and tell you exactly what's going on with the sound, but some of the names, like the almost 150 ARPs, are much less so. They're pretty basic. The sound sources here are well recorded. They're mostly nice and wide with lots of multi-samples. However, choosing the actual sound source when creating your own patches isn't that smooth, as it's a very long drop-down menu that you've got to negotiate from within the interface. The vocals are also nicely recorded, although the legato patches won't really fool anyone unless you drench it in reverb. The phrases and improvisations are lovely and long, and the offset control makes it easy to cut into the samples to choose the parts you like. The legato mode for the vocals is also a neat touch. This allows one phrase to flow into another one that plays partway through. It's also pretty useful that the phrases have all their tempo and keys indicated in the interface. There are a few things that I didn't like so much with this library, and a few problems that I've encountered. First off, I've got to talk about the Continuata installer. I used to love this easy installer and unpacker application, but I feel like over the last few months it's got worse and worse. The libraries that I'm downloading these days keep stopping and starting, and I'm having to reset many times before a library fully downloads. Now, with a big library like Ethera, that's a problem. It's not specifically a problem with Time and Space in particular, but I do think I'll be sticking with manual download links if I'm given the option. Onto Ethera Soundscapes, and some of the controls here are a bit fiddly, and there could easily be a bit of confusion with some of the button naming, especially the enable and disable buttons on the arpeggio section. I also think the manual could be clearer in explaining the exact functionality of the modulation tables. That could be gone into in a bit more detail. It's not the easiest thing in the world to assign modulation parameters, and also some bugs and a few missing samples I did notice in some of the patches. So in summary, I can't really fault the vocals on offer here, apart from the rather fake sounding legato patches. The synths and ambiences will slot nicely into my sound design toolkit, although they're not spectacular by any means. The library is keenly priced for a rather saturated market, but suffers from quirks, flaws, and the occasional audio bug, so be sure to balance that out when you're making a decision about Ethera Soundscapes. It's available now from Time and Space. Thank you so much for watching. That's just a small taste of the Samplecast, a weekly podcast and YouTube show for sample library geeks and plugin enthusiasts. You can find out more information at thesamplecast.com. Don't forget to subscribe.